we see that there's this legacy of violence in politics, not just in Pakistan, but certainly in the subcontinent. We see it in India, we see it in Sri Lanka, we see it in Bangladesh. And Pakistan, unfortunately, is a country that has seen many of its heads of states assassinated, many of its journalists, lawyers, activists, MPs, and it seems what accompanies that violence is silence. We're not allowed to talk about it. We're just supposed to tolerate it.
But, you know, I remember sitting in a house in Lahore 15 years ago, and people were saying then, we were talking about the legacy of British imperialism and the partition and everything that happened after the war, and people were saying then, but you know, India had the same legacy, but look at India roaring ahead now. And people in Pakistan, educated people, ask this question, don't they? They say, what is it about Pakistan that leaves us behind India, which is roaring ahead, becoming a global superpower?
Well, India has its problems too, certainly, when it comes down to poverty and education and health. But Pakistan was a country that started from scratch. It was a country that rebuilt everything. It had to make it anew. And it's only a 64-year-old country this year, so it's certainly in its infancy. But what we know 64 years later is that the political establishment has failed. The system has eaten its young in Pakistan.
I mean, it's interesting the language you use. This is the language of poetry, isn't it? I mean, it's evocative, to put it mildly. You are an author, you're a journalist, you're a writer.
Yes.
The temptation must be there to consider following the family business into politics. Where are you on that discussion, on that debate?
Not at all, actually, because I feel, as a young Pakistani, that we have a choice to make. And it's an urgent choice, and we have to choose whether we want democracy or we want dynasty. But we know from 30 years' experience in Pakistan that they don't go together. Where dynasty is exclusive, democracy is inclusive. Where democracy inspires participation, dynasty rejects it. And where a democracy ideally would be the creative mingling of differences and different political thought, dynasty is about the same. And it hasn't furthered progressive policies in Pakistan. It hasn't strengthened democratic institutions, only families.
So this is a no.
That's a very big no.
That's a big no to politics for you. Okay. Fix Pakistan. What's the manifesto for Pakistan? You've explained some of the ills. What's the prescription?
Oh, we have a huge problem with transparency. There's a law in the country called the National Reconciliation Ordinance that essentially wipes away 20 years' worth of corruption charges against bankers, bureaucrats and politicians. And this law also includes a stipulation that will make it virtually impossible to file future charges against sitting parliamentarians. So it takes the powerful and it puts them above the law. There is one law for the powerful and one law for everyone else. I think that's a huge problem, especially for a young country and a country that has a government in charge world-renowned for its corruption.
And it's a country as well which is so different depending on where you are. I mean, you can be in a city like Quetta and, you know, it's virtually Afghanistan, somewhere like Multan. But then in Lahore and Islamabad, it's very cosmopolitan, it's sophisticated and all the rest of it. And bringing that together, and then there's Karachi, of course, which is a great economic powerhouse port city. And it's that diversity which, you know, makes melding it all together tricky.
Oh, but absolutely. But it also makes it incredibly hopeful because Pakistan is a country of many religions. It's not just a country of Muslims, but also of Hindus, of Christians, of Parsis, of different ethnicities and different languages. And ideally, if you had a government or a system that was more devolved, where people had their own voices, you would see some of those differences and tolerance.
There'll be people listening to you, Fatima, who'll say, OK, this is all very good. She's hopeful about Pakistan's future, but they'll detect from your accent that you're educated partly in the United States, and they'll wonder whether it's a country that you are willing to commit your future to.
Yes. You know, I was born in exile.
Born in Tripoli?
In Kabul, actually.
In Kabul. But you grew up in
I grew
Tripoli?
up in Syria, in Damascus, and I first moved to my country when I was 11 years old. And it's been my home ever since. I studied abroad, and I travel very much for my book and my writing, but Karachi is home.